Hello everyone, and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Tuesday, July 11th, and I hope you all are having a wonderful day so far. I'm your host, William Willis, and in today's show, we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with incredible guests from around the world, so stay tuned. As always, I'm going to start off with our Techstrong News Recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then we will head over to Allen, where he sits down with Paul Prudhomme, Principal Security Analyst at Rapid7, to talk about threats to Japanese organizations by each relevant industry and highlight two key cross-industry phenomena, ransomware and state-sponsored threats. Allen then speaks to Bart Giordano, President of Networking, Intelligent Cellular, and Security at CommScope, about CommScope's 3 new Ruckus network solutions that offer enterprises and service providers new ways to deploy, manage, and operate the next generation of purpose-driven networks. Then, Mitch will meet with Patrick McHugh, Global Vice President of Channel Partners at LastPass, to discuss the recently launched LastPass Allegiance Partner Program, which makes it easier for solution providers, MSPs, and technology partners to help their customers prevent compromised credentials. Next, Mike Rothman is joined by Dan Amiga, co-founder and CTO of Island, to discuss why the enterprise browser is the best place to enforce security policies. We then go back to Mitch, where he sits down with Terry Ray, Impervis SVP of Data Security, GTM, and Field CTO and Fellow, to talk about data security, protection, and privacy, and how organizations can weave them into a coherent data protection strategy. Then Amanda Razzani speaks to Jerry Foster, CTO of Plex, about the state of smart manufacturing. We will then wrap up this broadcast with 2 sessions of TechStrongCon 2023. In the first session, Michael Bondar, Principal and Enterprise Trust Leader at Deloitte, talks about how to build digital trust. Then Caitlin Carollo, Sales Engineer at Metallic, talks about data recovery readiness in the modern IT environment. That's what we have coming up for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. So without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for July 11th. First up, the United Nations International Telecommunication Union organized a groundbreaking news conference featuring humanoid social robots to foster discussions about the future of artificial intelligence. The event showcased 9 robots, including Sophia, the UNDP's first robot innovation ambassador, and Grace, a healthcare robot. The purpose was to demonstrate the capabilities and limitations of robotics in relation to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The robots, accompanied by their creators or companions, answered questions from reporters emphasizing their potential efficiency as leaders while assuring they wouldn't replace human jobs or revolt. Although it was unclear to the extent of which the robots' responses were scripted, the event aims to highlight human-machine collaboration and explore the potential of AI, as well as, lessen the fears of AI taking over. Next, China has imposed over $1 billion in fines on financial companies for violations of consumer protection laws and corporate governance. Ant Group, operator of payments from the firm Alipay, was one of the main targets of the regulatory campaign. Chinese government's actions reflect concerns about risky lending and the desire to assert greater state control over the economy. Zooming out, the tech sector in China has faced increased scrutiny recently, with several companies, including Alibaba, Tencent, and Didi, receiving hefty fines. This being said, the announcement signals the end of China's crackdown on the tech sector and a shift towards normalized supervision. Alibaba's US-listed shares surged following the news, reflecting optimism that the crackdown is concluding. In other news, comedian Sarah Silverman, along with authors Christopher Golden and Richard Cadre, have filed separate lawsuits against OpenAI and Meta in a US district court, alleging copyright infringement. The suit claims that OpenAI's ChatGPT and Meta's Llama were trained on datasets acquired from shadow library websites containing their works, which were made available via torrent systems. Exhibits presented in the OpenAI suit demonstrate how ChatGPT can summarize the author's books without reproducing copyright information, though. The lawsuit against Meta asserts that the author's books were accessible in datasets used to train the llama models. The authors claim they did not consent to the use of their copyrighted works being used. Additionally, their lawsuits include multiple accounts of copyright violations, negligence, unjust enrichment, and unfair competition. Zooming out, these lawsuits are some of the first of their kind and are expected to challenge the boundaries of copyright law and have implications for the AI industry. Next up, Google has announced that its AI tool, MedPalm 2, designed to provide medical information, has been undergoing testing at the Mayo Clinic Research Hospital and other institutions since April of this year. MedPalm 2 is an updated version of Palm 2, the language model behind Google's Bard. The tool aims to assist countries with limited access to doctors by offering healthcare conversations based on a curated set of medical expert demonstrations. Additionally, Google assures that its customers testing MedPalm 2 will have control over their encrypted data while ensuring privacy. While MedPalm 2 demonstrated promising performance in reasoning, consensus-supported answers, and comprehension, a study revealed inaccuracies in irrelevant information compared to other human physicians. Although it's still in its early stages, Google believes that MedPalm 2 can significantly enhance the healthcare industry with the application of AI. On DevOps.com, we have an article looking at how Loft Labs has made its tool for creating dev environments open source. With Loft Labs making DevPod and open source software, teams can now manage developer environments as code more easily than other server-side alternatives. To learn more, go to DevOps.com. On Digital CXO, we have an article examining how AI is transforming contract management. AI and automation hold a huge amount of potential in regards to contract lifecycle management, and there are even several things that AI can help legal professionals with today. This article looks at 3 practical ways to use AI for contract lifecycle management. To learn more, go to digitalcxo.com. Finally, on Security Boulevard, we have a blog watch looking at a critical bug in SolarView's solar power monitoring product. For 14 months, hundreds of energy companies could have been exposed to an attack from a vulnerability, and this article looks at the community's reaction to this story. To learn more, go to securityboulevard.com. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. I am happy to have on Mr. Paul Prudhomme, Principal Security Analyst with Rapid7 today. We're going to be talking about Rapid7's recent, it's 2023, it's a recent though, Japan Cyber Threat Landscape Report, and I'm excited to hear about it. But before we do that, let's welcome Paul to Techstrong TV and find out a little bit about kind of Paul's story. Hey Paul, welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you.
Man. Oh, no, it's my pleasure to have you on. Paul, before we jump into this report, let's talk a little bit about, your principal security analyst over at Rapid7. Why don't we give people a little bit of your background?
Okay. Well, I came to Rapid7 through the acquisition of Insights, which was a threat intelligence startup that Rapid7 acquired almost 2 years ago now. So Rapid7 having had a whole variety of security services and offerings, but what it did not have was threat intelligence. So the point of this was to add a threat intelligence capability to that broader suite of security services that we provide. So I've been doing threat intelligence in my career in one way, shape, or form or another for 16, 17 years now. The second half of that career has been all in the commercial space, focusing specifically on cyber threat intelligence. I started out at VeriSign when iDefense was part of that, and then moved on later to Deloitte, where I was a leader of the cyber threat intelligence subscription service for quite a few years before I moved on to Insights. So that's the second half of my career. The first half of my career, I was a contractor in the U.S. intelligence community. That was not cyber threat intelligence per se. That was intelligence in cyberspace. And that is where I acquired both my grasp of the discipline of intelligence with an uppercase I, if you will. The discipline of spycraft as practiced by government intelligence services, and then also collecting that information in cyberspace. So slightly different wrinkle on it, but that's where I acquired the two main halves of my skill set that I've been using for the past decade or so.
Very cool. Great. It's a great story, a great career. I had a feeling there was some three-letter agencies or something in there somewhere, but let's leave it at that. Let's not get in trouble. Yeah. So, Paul, I think most of our audience, of course, is familiar with Rapid7. You spoke a little bit about kind of the breadth of Rapid7 today. I mean, I'm familiar with Rapid7 pretty much since Alan first started Rapid7. I'm going to guess it was around 2005, 2006. And back then, it was pure vulnerability scanning, right? I had co-founded a security company, which was a competitor. It was very similar. We had a product called VAM and Rapid7, and there were a bunch of others back then. There was Tenable and Qualys and Foundstone, which got bought by, I guess it was McAfee at the time. It was an interesting era of vulnerability scanning. But of course, today the security industry, or cyber as we call it, has grown up, and you can't just have vulnerability scanning. And Rapid7 has kind of grown and expanded during that whole time, adding AppSec capabilities, threat intel, as you mentioned, a full menu, if you will, of cyber offerings. And today they're one of the leaders, in the space there. I was intrigued when I saw this request for an interview come by, because I've never seen a Japan-specific cyber threat landscape report. And people lose sight of it, right? Japan is still, I think, the third largest economy in the world, right? Probably behind U.S. and China. And but it's a unique economy, right? I've got 30 years in tech, 25 plus in security. Always been told, look, if you want to play in the Japanese market, you got to have native language tools there. Your interface has to be native and Japanese and everything. And I never worked for a company that invested in that, so I never had a chance to really understand the Japanese market and the Japanese threat landscape. What is this the first time Rapid7's done one for Japan, or have you guys been doing this for a number of years?
Well, let me get back to the first point you mentioned. You said you've never seen a threat landscape or anything specific devoted to Japan. So that's exactly why I decided to write this. I thought that this is an area that's been really, I think, underserved by the security research coverage in English. So much of the security research that we see out there is heavily focused largely on the U.S. Primarily, and then to a lesser or secondary degree on Europe, and a lot of that is just because the U.S. is one part of it is because the U.S. is the largest economy in the world by a big margin, but also part of it is because so many of the security companies that dominate the market globally are also American companies. But who else is important, economically besides the U.S.? Well, there's China, but when we talk about China, we're not usually talking about them as a target, if you get my drift, or in a different context. So, after China, who's next? There's Japan. Okay, where can we find some information about threats to Japan? You look,
No, I've never seen any. That's what I'm saying.
If you want that sort of quick, handy dandy reference, threats to this country 101, a sort of a quick primer, a broad 10,000-foot overview, it doesn't exist. And you probably saw as I go through the report, I really had to piece together a lot of these things from just sort of passing or fragmentary or standalone references here and there. There are plenty of references to incidents in Japan that are buried, within the nooks and crannies of broader reports on other things. But to find a very broad standalone piece, Japan 101, it just doesn't exist. And I said, okay, well, maybe we should have it. Now, with that said, I like to recognize some of the work that the Japan CERT has done in English, that shedding light on some incidents in Japan that might not have otherwise come to the attention of the broader, global security community. Publishing this information in English does help to transcend the language barrier. And I'll say personally that I found that some of their research quite useful as I was putting this together.
Absolutely. Is it strictly the language barrier that you think
I
has
believe
prevented it?
I think that is a problem. It is maybe not the problem, but it is a factor. I imagine there are other ones, of course, but I think some of it is just a matter of perspective. It's just maybe somebody just hasn't asked the right question yet. The way I approach it is, okay, well, outside the U.S., who's the most significant target economically? So some of it is the thought process. But yes, I do believe language is an issue, not just in the security coverage, but also when we get talking about attackers or the actual incidents. As you may notice in the report, one of the points I raised was that we're not just talking about incidents inside Japan. We're talking about global companies that are headquartered in Japan, and that's why I expanded the scope geographically a little bit to also include the overseas subsidiaries and affiliates of Japanese companies. And in my mind, you can't just arbitrarily stop at the borders of Japan because the companies are all over the world. The Japan's global economic footprint is huge and really only second to the U.S. when you think about it. And how many of these Japanese brands are so familiar to us that we almost forget that they're Japanese? It's just so familiar that we don't think of it as foreign in that sense. So
it's part of this global economy and that globalist view, and I'm a globalist, so I'm all good with that.
Yeah.
But I will tell you just a personal observation, and I don't have metrics to back this up. I have seen, you want to call it the opening of Japan over the last, let's say, 5 years, certainly since COVID. Where, as I said earlier, before, if your product wasn't native language for the market there, you didn't really stand a chance.
Yeah.
But I have seen now English language products penetrating Japanese markets, and I've seen a larger number of Japanese companies and true, based in Japan folks participating in cyber and DevOps and industry conferences, whether it's in Singapore or Australia or here in the U.S., West Coast, and so forth. So I do think we're seeing more of a integration of Japan into that global sort of community, where earlier in my career, not so much.
So you're talking about the importance of localization. So this is an issue not just for the security professionals, but also for the attackers. And as I kind of alluded,
it's true. Yeah, that's one way of thinking of it.
If you're going to try to phish somebody, generally speaking, attackers, especially criminals, tend to prefer targets whose language they speak, and of course English, being the primary international lingua franca, makes us in the U.S. and the U.K. and so on more accessible to a fairly wide array of threat actors. But with Japanese, a language that's not really very widely spoken outside Japan, and can be challenging for foreigners to really master, especially some of the social and cultural nuances that might not exist in other languages. Trying to write a convincing phish in Japanese is going to be kind of tough. So why do that? when you could just fish their employee in New York or London who speaks English, and then use that initial access point in the overseas subsidiaries to move laterally into the parent company in Japan. And as I was doing this research, I saw this so many times that I thought that this really needed to be highlighted. That for a global Japanese company, one of the main access vectors, or one of the main points of vulnerability, is those overseas subsidiaries being more accessible, either because of linguistic issues that make them more vulnerable to social engineering, or it could be, if it was an acquisition, maybe there were some existing security issues that the company inherited with the acquisition or the merger, and that just exposes the parent company in Japan to whatever security issues they had overseas.
I mean, look, even English language phishing emails are sometimes so poorly written that it makes it kind of easy to identify them. But you're right. I mean, the fact that that their language, it's a barrier, not just for marketers, but for the bad guys as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure, but I've got to assume that there exists within Japan itself a malicious element, whether it be crime, financially, criminal financial activity related, or hacktivists or whatever, who are in fact are native Japanese speakers.
There is, but I didn't find a whole lot that was really compelling or interesting about it. Now, of course, again, the language barrier is an issue, and maybe there is information in there that I simply just wasn't in a position to appreciate. But you mentioned criminal activity, and I found actually that the most really significant, some of the most significant criminal attacks on Japan have been actually from the North Korean actors.
Really? Yeah, that makes sense.
Who, although being state-sponsored, have been engaging in criminal activity for the purpose of raising revenue for the government, especially in the form of cryptocurrency, since they can move and use that outside of the traditional, financial services channels because of the sanctions that they're under.
Well, I mean, no, hacking and for financial gain is a cash crop for North Korea. I mean, it's probably one of their leading industries from an export point of view, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just Japan, we should mention. But, let's jump into the report a little bit more, Paul. And before we do, I want to let people know, anyone who'd like to check out this report, I'm going to try to give you the URL here. If I mess it up, I apologize. But you can get it at rapid7.com/info/cyber-threat-landscape-of-Japan, and we will try to put that link into the notes on this interview for Techstrong TV. But if you're listening to this via podcast or you're seeing it streamed on the Techstrong network, if you come, that is the address where you can get it at. Or you can come through to Techstrong TV and we'll have the address there for you in the notes. Paul, that being said, so you mentioned language being a big barrier. Non-Japanese based outposts of Japanese companies being probably the leading sort of vector into these Japanese companies from an attack point of view. What else would you say come at some of the big takeaways there?
So ransomware does really stand out among the various criminal threats. I mean, obviously, ransomware is at the forefront of almost everybody's minds, around the world when they're concerned about criminal threats. But Japan, I think it does hit a little bit harder there, just because of the nature of the economy. So much of the economy consists of manufacturing. And when you're a manufacturing organization, even the slightest disruption can have a really significant impact on the business. Normally when we talk about ransomware in the U.S. or Europe, we ask what are the preferred victims, and then the first answer most people are going to say is healthcare, because healthcare, it's easier to extort them because the time sensitivity of what they do. People are going to die if they can't get their services, or it's going to affect their health in some serious way. So that notion of having a low tolerance for downtime because of a ransomware related outage. Now, with manufacturing, obviously, it's not the potentially life or death issue that it might be for a healthcare provider. But if your job is to make things and you can't make things, that's a very serious problem. So that perception of greater vulnerability to extortion, I think, is part of it. And actually, the Japanese authorities did release some figures last year, and it showed that manufacturing was the most frequently targeted sector for ransomware by a fairly wide margin, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1/3 of all incidents were with manufacturing, whereas healthcare was much lower on the list, somewhere in the single digits. So there's that, and then also, if you're going to compromise a manufacturing organization, sometimes ransomware is the best way to do that, to monetize it, simply because sometimes a manufacturing organization might not have a whole lot of information that is useful to resell on criminal forums. They might have some personal information for employees and so on and things like that, but it might. Just the content that you take from there might not be that juicy, and it depends on what it is. Now, if it's a company that makes ball bearings or something like that, is that intellectual property really useful? Probably not. Now, if it's something more sophisticated, like consumer electronics or cars or something, maybe that would have some more resale value. But basically, if you're going to monetize a compromised manufacturing organization, ransomware is often the best way to do it. So it's funny. When I was writing the report, I had a whole separate section on just manufacturing outside the automotive industry, and somebody said, "Well, you need a standalone section on ransomware," and I realized that the section I had on manufacturing outside the automotive industry already was pretty much a section about ransomware. So the section that you see now started as labeled as ransomware was actually just the manufacturing section, and then I realized that the ransomware section and the manufacturing section they overlapped so much that it just turned into my whole treatment of ransomware for the paper. Now, obviously, ransomware does affect other industries, including automotive, and I do think it's important to separate out the automotive industry in particular from other types of manufacturing. And actually, I found that in contrast to non-automotive manufacturing, the automotive industry actually had one of the widest range of threats affecting it compared to the other industries. All the other ones were fairly straightforward, and there was a pretty obvious reason why people would be taking an interest in them. But with automotive, it was all across the board. Certainly, ransomware is part of it, but then there's things like stealing intellectual property, stealing diagnostic and dealer tools that you can use in car hacking. Like these sort of things that you see at Black Hat and DEF CON, and people hacking into cars and so on. Well, if you steal some of the proprietary tools that the company has, car hacking gets a lot easier and a lot more interesting when you have access to that sort of thing. There's consumer data, like when people sign up with the brand or the manufacturer for connected car services or for maintenance and warranty things and so on. That could be compromised either with a compromise in the manufacturer or the dealership or some of the third-party vendors that provide these services. Security misconfigurations can happen in any industry, but I was surprised how frequently I came across it in the automotive industry to a degree that just was really disproportionate. Not sure why, if that was just a fluke. But so many, when you see something so many times that it jumps out at you like that, I think that's a good sign that something's up. So they did seem to be a bit more prone to it than the other industries that I came across. So really, the automotive set for the half of the report that breaks threats down by industry, I think the automotive one is the most interesting, simply because of the wide variety of issues that the industry faces, and also because the automotive industry is such a huge part of Japan's very recognizable global economic footprint.
Hey, great work on this, Paul. I want to thank you. I thank you for coming on and thank you for doing this report.
Thank you.
Yeah, no. Thank you for joining us. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be back in a second.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Techstrong TV. You know, a few weeks ago we were lucky enough to have this gentleman, Bart Giordano from CommScope with us here. They're the folks behind Ruckus. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But we had Bart on, and it was a great story about the Prada Luna Rosa racing team and how, you know, what they're doing with Ruckus and to help, kind of cutting edge. People don't realize how IT-driven competitive car racing is, right? I mean, that's the coolest crap factor, being involved in a racing team. Company I had started, we had a NASCAR relationship going back 15 years. Just being able to go by the pit crew and, on the inside and everything, it was kind of like I felt like a little boy, it was crazy. But be that as it may, you could go check that interview out on Techstrong TV. Bart is back, though, to tell us about some interesting new developments around Ruckus, and I think you're going to like it. Bart, welcome back to Techstrong TV. How are you?
Thanks, Alan. It's great to be here again.
Great. I'm not going to make you repeat the story we talked about off camera about your adventures in Toronto and Las Vegas.
Thank you.
But that being said, you know what? There are people out here saying, CommScope, not sure I know those guys. Ruckus, yeah, I remember hearing something about it. I think I know what that is. But Bart, for our folks at home here, give us the background.
Sure. CommScope is a connectivity powerhouse, right? Anytime you access the internet, it more than likely you're using technology provided by CommScope, whether that's the copper and fiber cabling that the signals are running over, or the CPE equipment in your house that provides your connectivity to your service provider. And in the case of Ruckus, we're the enterprise networking arm of CommScope, providing world-class solutions to create connectivity experiences for enterprises around the world, places like hotels and large venues and educational institutions, etc.
Excellent. And Bart, for people who maybe right off the bat say, geez, I'd like to know the website if I want to find out more about CommScope and Ruckus,
sure.
Where do you send them?
Yeah, you go to commscope.com to learn about CommScope solutions. And if you're looking for information specific to Ruckus, you can find us at ruckusnetworks.com.
And that is RUKUS, I believe, correct?
RUCKUS
CK.
networks.com.
Yeah. Spelling was never my thing. I'm sorry.
Just look for the dog.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. And Bart, one final thing before we jump into today's kind of itinerary, your position with Ruckus and CommScope.
Sure. So I lead what we call the Networking, Intelligence, Cellular, and Security Solutions division of CommScope. CommScope is organized across 5 business segments. And in what we call the NICS segment, there are 3 business units. One is our CommScope Sentry IoT Device Security Solutions business unit. We have an Intelligent Cellular business unit that comprises of our Era Digital DAS platform and OneCell small cell cellular portfolio. And finally, Ruckus Networks, for which I'm also the general manager.
Excellent. I love it. All right, Bart, thank you for providing us all of that kind of background information. Let's jump in some recent announcements, recent new product features coming out of Ruckus. If you don't mind, share it with our audience.
I'd be happy to. So last time we spoke, we talked about the Ruckus Cloud platform, right? Cloud-based management for disparate enterprise networks around the globe. We've evolved that now into a new offering we call Ruckus One. And the way to think about Ruckus One, it's the culmination of all the best elements of Ruckus, including our AI-driven network and service assurance platform, into one unified portal that allows increasingly enterprise complex networks to be managed through a single pane of glass.
Love it. So where do we go from here now?
Well, if you think about some of the trends in enterprise networking, we talked about the complexity, and in order to address some of that, these networks generate a tremendous amount of data, and traditionally, managing and troubleshooting those networks was a very time-intensive process as you sort through data, trying to identify where network anomalies may exist. I think one of the things that those of us that have been in the Wi-Fi industry appreciate is that every network issue presents itself to the user as, well, the Wi-Fi is broken, right? And more often than not, there's an issue somewhere deep in the network. Your internet might be down. You may not be able to reach your DNS servers. You might have a DHCP address issue. And the challenge of sorting out where the real network challenge exists, or where the anomaly exists in the network, can now be addressed using data science and artificial intelligence to automate that process. And that's what the Ruckus One platform offers, regardless of the complexity of the network, the amount of data that is being generated in the network. We're able to use artificial intelligence now to detect anomalies in the network, oftentimes before a user experiences that anomaly. We're able to prioritize those issues for the IT team. We're able to determine the performance of a network, before users show up, so that if you're a managed service provider and you have a hard SLA requirement that you need to meet in that network, you can have confidence based on our service assurance capabilities that network is going to perform when your users show up in a stadium or an arena for a big event, or in a classroom for instruction that day.
Excellent. So let's talk from a user point of view now, though.
Sure.
Right? It's a single pane of glass. It kind of it takes away, I call it the desensitization factor of just information overload. But, so if you're a typical, enterprise corporate user out here, like what are the telltale signs, if you will, that says, I should look into this?
Sure. I think, the use cases that we find in the enterprise are evolving, right? The traditional use case is a user and, their suite of devices comes into a campus environment or a venue, and, they're using connectivity for access to corporate resources and the internet, et cetera, to get their job done. But enterprises in certain industries are in the process of digital transformation. And in many cases, we're seeing new classes of devices come on the network. And that's why we've introduced this concept of a multi-access public and private network. So we no longer can assume that the only devices coming on the network are traditional wired Ethernet devices or Wi-Fi devices for users. There's lots of things coming on the network. Those might be IoT sensors, things like thermostats. In the hospitality industry, we're connecting door locks to the network. And oftentimes they're coming in over access technologies other than Wi-Fi, maybe Bluetooth or Zigbee. And in places like factories or in agriculture, there's use cases where you need to provide very broad coverage, or you need to consider mobility, right? So things moving around in your environment, automated guided vehicles and robotics and so forth. And there's an opportunity then to introduce cellular solutions to the enterprise, right? Traditionally in the domain of mobile network operators. But these use cases, maybe are better suited for cellular than they are for Wi-Fi. If you're thinking about covering acreage for a farm or millions of square feet of a distribution center. And so as these new devices are coming into the network, obviously the complexity of those networks is increasing dramatically. And the Ruckus One platform is meant to address that complexity by enabling you to manage IoT, traditional Wi-Fi and wired Ethernet devices, as well as private cellular services through this unified portal. And again, leverage artificial intelligence in order to be able to manage, troubleshoot that network, and also receive business intelligence, right? Understand what's going on in your network to help you better serve your users and operate your campus environment more efficiently.
Love it. I love it. All right. So, you convinced someone out there. They want to. Where do I sign? How do I get on here? What's the on-ramp here, Bart?
Yeah, certainly. I think the other thing to point out is, consuming all of this technology into an enterprise can be quite capital intensive, right? And so one of the things to think about is the changing consumption model that we've all become accustomed to in the subscription economy, right? I mean, you want to acquire a new service, you can either pay for it all up front or pay as you go. And so along with the Ruckus One platform and the multi-access public and private networking solution, we are also adopting this networking as a service consumption model where we can wrap all of the solution up into the hardware, the software, the service, the installation, the design and support into an OpEx model where you can pay as you go rather than pay for everything up front. And so, if you're interested in learning more, you can come to our website. You can reach out to one of our partners, right? We sell through a vast network of channel partners around the world who provide world-class services and are really excited about this platform, which is sort of purpose-built for a managed services environment. And we'll be happy to give you more information and get you going with Ruckus One.
Absolutely. Very cool. Now, if I mischaracterize this, Bart, please correct me. Ruckus One is kind of the culmination of several of these different feature releases and stuff. But now you've kind of solidified it all under one. No pun. Hence the name Ruckus One.
Yeah,
all under one umbrella. There's more here, though. Yes or no?
Yeah, well, I think, Ruckus, our portfolio, since I joined when we were Ruckus Wireless and we delivered really great Wi-Fi to enterprises, has expanded dramatically, both through acquisitions we've done, as well as a lot of organic development around our IoT platform and around things like private cellular services and the AI-driven analytics solution. And these persisted, well on their own, but were acquired as, separate products. And so Ruckus One is the culmination of all that. We integrate IoT, we integrate network management, we integrate AI ops through our Ruckus Analytics platform, zero trust enterprise networking, et cetera, all in a cloud service that operates at very high scale and is really, again, purpose-built to enable our partners to deliver these services while recognizing that the preferred consumption model for these services is evolving toward the subscription economy.
Like everything else, right? It's a SASE.
Exactly.
Right? SaaS ops, some people call it. And so really what we're talking about is can be consumed. I guess you guys coined the term, not me here, right? Network as a service.
That's right. Yeah, it's a very flexible model. For IT organizations or managed service providers that have operational networks, but are now expanding to things like IoT or private cellular, for which, they may not have an existing skill set. And there's a steep learning curve around. We can come in through this networking as a service solution and enable that partner to expand their capabilities and expand their offering into their customer base and enable enterprises to do more with their network without the complexity of having to understand how to operate private cellular or how to integrate IoT into their environment. We've really tried to simplify those workflows and make the adoption of these new technologies, enabling those new use cases we talked about, as frictionless as possible.
I love it. Good stuff, man. Bart, anything else we haven't hit on?
I think we touched on, the three primary things that we've introduced in this release. Obviously, the new Ruckus One platform, this concept of multi-access public and private networks, all offered as a service.
Excellent, man. Bart, as always, a pleasure to have you on here.
Pleasure to be with you, Alan. Thank you so much for your time.
Come on and keep us posted of what's going on with Ruckus, as well as the rest of CommScope, right?
You bet.
Well, good
I'd
stuff.
be happy to.
All right. Bart Giordano, GM of Ruckus, Ruckus division of CommScope here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Techstrong TV.
Well, the great pleasure of being joined by Patrick McHugh. Patrick is Global VP of Channel Partners at LastPass. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You bet. We're talking about a recent announcement that LastPass made around a LastPass Allegiance Partner Program. Of course, most technology vendors have partner programs. You're in charge of partners. Curious, tell us about it and what some of the goals of it, why you created this, and what you're hoping to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're pretty excited about this because unlike a lot of companies, this isn't an iteration of a program that's been around. This is a brand new from scratch partner program. And the reason for that is if you look back historically, we've always been part of LogMeIn. So our product was a component of the go-to partner network, which is what they called it. And as we've separated into our own company, LastPass, we've come to realize that in the security space, we have a very different go-to-market than, say, collaboration or remote support. So we started about 9 months ago to build out a brand new partner program, and it's going to be one program to manage all of the different go-to-markets that our partners could have. Solution providers, which can resell or refer, MSPs, which obviously do this as a managed service, a component of their offering, and then technology partners creating integrations so that, for example, a partner like Okta can work with us so that we can integrate our solutions with them. And so the program was basically necessity. We had to have something, but the other nice piece was we were able to design it specifically for the go-to-markets that we were entering with these partners. So we had the opportunity to take some of the partnerships that we were working with as LogMeIn that they had been doing some LastPass and go and talk to them. Like, what's important to you? What's going to move the needle on this? Why would you sign up for this program if you didn't know about LastPass? So it's been pretty exciting as we've launched it, and we're starting to see some pretty good traction.
The one thing that's obvious to you, you know as well or better than I do, the audience you're talking to in terms of customers, yes, they're end users, but a lot of security people, and they're different kind of buyers. Right? And so I'm guessing the kind of partners that you're talking about, solution providers, managed service providers, they also know how to talk to that audience. And so that might not be something that a go-to kind of program would necessarily specialize in. And now you can really hone into what those partners, but also those end customers are looking for and how to communicate and understand what you can provide them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a big key component of it is when we were part of LogMeIn, we tried to use the same partners to take LastPass to market. And it's a different language and the buyer is different. A CISO is very different than someone that's managing, infrastructure, those types of things. So this allowed us to kind of build those benefits out based on what that partner needs to serve their customers. And I think it's a great point. The customers in security rely on partners. Many of these security companies, some of the biggest security companies in the world are 100% channel. And that's because the technology changes every single day. And a CISO, even at a large organization, cannot keep up with that. So they rely on these partners to actually be there to talk through what's coming up next, what's exciting, what do we need to be thinking about to ensure our environment is actually safe. And that's like, for us, right now, we're hearing a lot about passwordless. And so people, it's a buzzword, right? And everybody thinks, oh my God, passwordless passwords are going away. Well, we know that's not going to happen overnight. But we need our partners to understand what we're doing on passwordless and how it's different than our password management, but a component of it, so that they can start looking at like they're experts in that space. And then once they say, yeah, we need a solution for passwords and for passwordless, that's when they can introduce LastPass.
It's easy to equate passwordless with a specific technology, right? You could say it's passkey, that's passwordless, but it really isn't. It's a much bigger spectrum, right? Because not everything can move to that, nor is that necessarily the right solution for everything either. I'd love your perspective on when you say because you're talking to a broad audience, right? So when you say passwordless, what does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a combination, just like you just said. So a lot of people think of passwordless as biometrics. So the ability to log in with your thumbprint, your facial recognition, those types of things. And that is a key component to passwordless. And currently at LastPass on our phone, so our mobile app, you can do that. You can log into LastPass and into your password vault with your fingerprint. So we're going to evolve that. So that's also at the desktop, and we're going to kind of move forward with that. Then I think the second piece is these FIDO2 compliant, technologies. So we have to have integrations into those technologies. If someone's plugging in a USB, I was actually at Identiverse a few weeks ago, and I saw a company that had a ring, and that's how you identified. You would scan your fingerprint on a ring, and that's what they were doing to identify you. So you have to have those FIDO2 integrations so that you can actually get into the system. Then there's the pass keys. And what's interesting about the pass keys is that is all the buzz, but there's only about 20 sites in the world that actually use pass keys. So it's going to take time to get there. So what we're doing in Q4, we're launching a new product that will allow you to manage your pass keys right alongside your passwords. And when I presented at Identiverse, I talked about the fact that 30 some years ago, when I took a job at Coca-Cola to manage their mainframes, people said, you're crazy. Like mainframes they're done. It's all client server. It's all internet. Well, 30 some years later, it's a $14 billion a quarter business for IBM, right? So this will take time to do that. And so when we designed our program, we specifically made sure we were thinking of the future and how is passwordless going to affect our partners, and how are they going to position and upsell and cross-sell that? And how do we build the enablement around it? Because I think that's an important thing. Yes, we have the tiers, we have all of that everyone would expect in a partner program, but we've also had the ability to build from scratch all of the enablement from kickstart sales to solution engineering to implementation that now we've built into our LastPass University that our partners will have access to through our brand new portal, which also has all of the marketing that they'll need, the deal registration. If they need a service ticket, they can enter all of that. So doing this from scratch, it was a whole different world for us versus just relaunching something, making a tweak to the name, changing gold to, blue or something like that. This was a big undertaking for us.
It's not a restructuring of a program. It sounds like you really, as well as designed the whole thing again from the ground up, but the delivery, the content, the communications purpose of it, all of it. So I have some appreciation. That's a big undertaking. Talk a little bit about the reception, both from partners as well as from customers.
Yeah, it's been really good from a partner perspective. So we've already to date had over 400 partners actually sign up for the program. That's mostly going to be your MSPs and your solution providers, because obviously on the technology side, there's some integration and some talk points and things like that need to be developed. I think what they've really appreciated is that we've done all of the sign up through an automated fashion, where once we approve them for the program, we send out an email, they click on a link, it goes to the portal, they accept the agreement, and they're good to go. Like that takes them into the portal. So there's none of this waiting weeks or months to do things. We actually had one partner who we'd been talking to for quite some time, but they wanted to actually wait until we had our program. They didn't want to sign up on the go-to partner program because they weren't going to do anything over there. And we were able to, within about an hour and a half, get them in the program, logged in, and they registered a lead that day, right? So it shows kind of the power of that, having that a fully automated system from that perspective. And what's interesting is we're already getting questions about a lot of the benefits. Like, hey, when we signed up, we know we're at this level because we'd been working with you before. How do we take advantage of that MDF? How do we take advantage of these types of things that were in there? So they're not just signing up, they're actually looking and engaging and really trying to drive the program for what it was set up to do, give them benefits so we can jointly sell more solutions.
Very good. Very good. Any thoughts on what's next? I'm not asking you to pre-announce. Well, you can if you want, but kind of where do you want to go next with this? Obviously, you're not done. There's more work to do, right?
Yeah, a lot more work to do. I think the three big areas that we'll really be focused on is making sure that we have the technology piece built out, trying to standardize how we engage and work with distribution, especially globally, and then also taking this to a much bigger audience than historically what we've had. So we've just started in Latin America. We're 100% channel. So only channel, only through distribution. We're doing the same in ASEAN. So Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, those areas, 100% channel. And we're now looking at where else can we go 100% channel? Now that we have a program, how do we take that to partners in Europe, for example, where we may not have an entity in France? We have some activity there. We've done deals. How do we turn that into a partner first, partner only by leveraging the partner program? And then I think the other big thing is just continuing to enhance the portal and the training and the benefits. So right now, most of our training is accreditations, and we look to move those to true certifications where people will wear that as a badge of honor.
Excellent. Well, folks can find out more if you're interested in the partner program at lastpass.com/partner. I just Googled it. So it takes you right to the page. You can sign up right there. Just what you were talking about before. It's been a pleasure, Patrick. I hope you'll come back. Patrick McHugh, who is Global VP of Channel Partners at LastPass. Thanks for joining us today.
Excellent. Thanks for having me. Take care.
You bet.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hi, everybody. Mike Rothman here. Another interview for Techstrong TV. I am joined by Dan Amiga, who is the co-founder and CTO. Dan, you're the CTO? Is that
CTO.
CTO of Island. Island is an enterprise browser company, but I'll let Dan explain that. You certainly don't want me giving the intro to Dan's company and Island. We're going to get into a couple of interesting things. Obviously, just kind of why the browser is an interesting place to enforce a number of different security policies that have been hard to enforce at scale for many years. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about things like content protection, DLP as a mechanism to do that, and really a new announcement that Island just made about adding some capabilities to their enterprise browser platform. So, Dan, welcome to Techstrong TV. How are you today?
I am wonderful. Thank you, Mike.
All right, coming to us from Tel Aviv. You can't really see it, but Dan showed me a view of the beach. It's a pretty scenic place. That is a fake background behind me. I am not in Boca water. I'm in a dungeon somewhere that nobody knows where we are. So Dan, tell us a little bit about Island. I know you've been on the show a couple times, so some folks may have a little bit of a background, but I never make any assumptions. So why the enterprise browser is interesting to you, and also some of the key capabilities that you're bringing to enterprises with the Island browser.
Oh, sure, Mike, and thank you for having me. So Island, headquartered in Dallas, Texas, and then our engineering and product teams are based here in Tel Aviv. And what we figured out is that probably the most used application in the enterprise is the browser, but it was not designed for the enterprise. So when you need to do application delivery, like let employees, contractors, users from home access their Salesforce, their Office 365, their other business applications, homegrown applications, essentially do the work, right? You have to buy, integrate many different solutions. You got to have a VPN. You got to use VDI for that. You got to use some DLP controls, which we're going to talk about. How do you do malware scanning? What about a password manager? How do you measure the digital experience? You probably need to put in 50 tools in line somewhere, and that completely goes against end user experience, right? So what we've done is, based on Chromium, which is the open source code behind Chrome, Edge, etc., we've built Island, an enterprise browser distribution that has, think about the security, the IT, and the end user productivity controls baked inside. So you launch it like it looks like Chrome or Edge, right? But the VPN is built inside, the DLP is built inside, even the privacy tools to protect the user from all sorts of privacy invasion, cookies, etc., are built into the browser. So you don't have to install these weird extensions. And with that, we allow organizations to reduce their VDI usage, consolidate their security and IT tools, better support a BYOD model, or a contractor model where you don't have to ship laptops. And by the way, it doesn't go against Chrome or Edge in any manner. Users can use Chrome and Edge, but when they need to use their business apps, they're being redirected to Island, which is where they do their work. So far, we've been blessed to have tremendous success in the market. Many large enterprise customers, Fortune 10, Fortune 100, but also a lot of tech companies, medium businesses from really any vertical. So exciting times for us.
I mean, having struggled working with a number of consulting clients, with VDI, right? Just the provisioning and getting that up and running, and I got to have the right client on the device that I'm using at that given time. I mean, it's a huge hassle. So I can certainly see, the value there. But also, I mean, let's talk a little bit about, kind of the remote context, right? Obviously a couple of years ago, right around the time where you said you guys founded Island, we got into a position where we couldn't be in the same place, where everybody was remote by definition. And I think that created a lot of both scale issues and manageability problems in terms of enforcing policies where you don't have kind of that traditional perimeter. And we're both longtime security folks, right? So the perimeter is kind of how we grew up. And it's just like, build the moat deep, make it tough, put some sharks in there, and everything will be all right. And then, again, HTTP screwed everything up from that standpoint. And then, now this whole SaaS thing means I have no idea where my data is. So it's an interesting approach to really kind of look at the user as kind of the center of that universal, turning Galileo and Copernicus on their ear a little bit from that standpoint. But again, I mean, I think it's an interesting approach. I mean, do you see organizations looking at it as much a management tool as a security tool, or is it, most of the main use case is security when you get down to it?
I'd say security is one use case, but definitely an access tool, a management tool, and really an end user experience platform. So you think about the journey where companies have to spend thousands of dollars on a VDI session, and then what we call the length of the wire. You got to wait till these pixels from the cloud somewhere render locally on your endpoint. Nobody wants to do that. That's not what I call the consumer experience, which you buy a laptop and then it's just a perfect experience, right? With Island, it is, right? We bring you the security controls and benefits you get from a VDI session in a much better ROI and cost factor, and a much better user experience. And I like when you said then HTTP came along. So if you think about the SaaS vendors, think about Salesforce, for example. These guys have hundreds of security professionals, right? Protecting the Salesforce front end, the Salesforce back end. But the moment you spin your browser and go to Salesforce and authenticate, where is your cookie? The cookie is local. Where is your cache? Where is the data? What happens if somebody takes screenshots locally from your machine, right? You got to protect that last mile. So when you use Island complements that by doing what we call last mile security on the device. And that's a super popular use case for us, the manageability, the end user experience, and the security.
Yeah. So I don't want to. I mean, we do want to talk about DLP. We want to talk about Gen AI, but I have one more question on that front. And one of the advantages that a lot of the large, especially heavily regulated organizations looked at and really wanted with VDI was this idea that the content was within their confines, right? You were just sending presentation out there. There was no cache. All the data was, again, on that central environment when you were doing Fireglass back in the day. Again, similar type of approach. Everything was controlled within an environment. How are you guys protecting that cache, protecting that data that does kind of end up on that local machine since, in a regulated environment, that can be pretty problematic?
So one of the things that I learned, you're right, my first company was called Fireglass. It was pioneering remote browser isolation. We, by the way, have some of these capabilities in Island today. One of the things that is required when you want to protect data is making sure that it cannot, what we call, leak away in the endpoint, right? So we make sure there's no man in the middle where you can't intercept the data on the network. You can't really take a screenshot. You can't use developer tools to extract elements out. So everything on the endpoint is actually encrypted, your cache, your session, your cookies. So you really can't take the data out, right, in one sense. But then the other thing is you got to look at the context. So even if you have a VDI session, somebody can spin a browser and copy things from your business application into Pastebin, right? Island also gives you that contextual layer that says, well, you can only really exchange data between your business applications, not with the wild internet, right? So that combination of those two gives you the solution you want better than a VDI, right, in security and cost.
So one of the things we kind of said when we were just chatting ahead of time is it's really more of an operating system than an application. And I think when you start thinking about enforcing policies between applications, right? I think that's what you're getting at there. And again, an important aspect of that, because again, an application's application, you can run other applications. You can, back in the old days, we had the green border. I remember green border, company Google bought and then, drove into the ground. But it was a similar type of concept where they wanted it to be a very isolated type of experience within the browser, but ultimately because they didn't control all the other applications, you could get around it. Like everything else. So interesting thing. Let's talk a little bit about content, right? Again, coming out of the remote browser isolation, world, obviously the challenges and being at Symantec for a while in a past life, DLP was a thing, a big, heavy thing, right? That generated thousands of alerts that nobody would ever really look at. So now you guys are talking about content, kind of security within the browser platform, within the enterprise, the Island enterprise browser. So when you say that, what do you mean, right? Is it just, hey, I'm going to provide some context, I'm going to look for intellectual property? Because DLP can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yes, first you gotta make it easy, right? You gotta make it easy on customers and IT, because DLP tools have been so challenging to operate, and you would meet customers. Yeah, at scale, you would meet customers that have like a whole team just doing DLP policies and debugging those policies. So I'll give you a few examples when you build it from the ground up, when you build that operating system that we call Island, right? First, what we can do is you can define application boundaries. And that makes management and also security much simpler, right? So you can basically say clipboard operations or files, right? Or drag and drop can only be exchanged between the business applications in mind, right? It's much easier than going and defining DLP tagging, etc. Right? Now, we do leverage, because a lot of our enterprise customers do have the files already tagged. So we do integrate with Microsoft Information Protection or different tagging solutions. But think about application boundaries as one thing that's really essential. Then the next thing is you want to control PII data, or you want to be able to allow customers to mask data in the page itself. Call centers is a typical use case. You've got a call center agent. We're going to talk about ChatGPT soon. You want to be able to mask data before it goes on the wire or before it's being rendered to the end user, and then build workflows on top of that. Island gives you that as well. So we have DLP controls on file upload and download. We have DLP controls on the network. We have DLP controls where you can mask content and you can define application boundaries. And what we did is we took that, you can apply it easily on any SaaS application, right? And specifically, one of the more popular applications we are getting a lot of inbound interest on is any application that's based on ChatGPT or all the OpenAI interfaces or BART in that sense.
Yep. So let's go there, right? Because again, I think it's one of these things that people don't quite understand yet. I mean, yeah, it's novel, and ask it to write you a short story, in the voice of Poe about something inane, right? A lot of folks have fun with that. But as a business tool, you've got people that are uploading private data, right? You're sending this, hey, put this in a table, or hey, format this in a certain way, or draw a conclusion, from that perspective, and it does create clearly not just a regulatory problem, but a security and an intellectual property protection problem. And again, it's not that these folks are trying to be malicious about it, right? They're trying to do their job, and they see ChatGPT as a way to maybe do that a little bit easier. But obviously, it creates all sorts of different issues. So have you done anything specifically with ChatGPT, or is this just, kind of the basic island stuff that you guys have been doing for the last couple of years applied to this specific problem?
We have built a whole what we call a module around ChatGPT to help our customers, or maybe large language models in general. So the main thing is, I don't think these users are trying to be malicious, as you said, Mike. Right? It's a business enablement problem. Right? Now, what happens if you block it as an organization? Your end users will do it on their home computer. They will find a way to take the documents out. So it becomes a bigger problem, right? So it's all about enablement. And I think one of the most encouraging things for my product folks and engineering folks and with us in Island is our customers are sending us the videos they send their end users with. We're introducing Island today, and it will be an easier way to use ChatGPT, etc. So what have we done? First, we have added what we call an AI assistant, where any user of Island can go in and interact with the AI assistant. In the backend, that can be based on ChatGPT, or that can be based on the organization LLM model. And then we have our DLP controls, where you can say, hey, you cannot send PII data to the ChatGPT engine, or you cannot send any organization policy data, and you can define those DLP controls. So that's our AI assistant tech. The second thing we did is we actually wrapped it as an application. So you don't have to use a standalone, you don't have to use a full browser, a full Island browser. You can just launch the ChatGPT app. It has all of our DLP controls, and you can immediately work with it from within other applications, the standalone app in the operating system. And then finally, as I've mentioned, you can define what we call application boundaries. And you can actually say you cannot copy data from business applications into the ChatGPT window, into the AI assistant window, etc. So a full workflow, organizations can, it takes us about 15 minutes to roll out and explain to IT how to configure, but a very quick way to enable ChatGPT within the organization. And now we're getting all sorts of interesting requests from customers. So they want to bring their own ChatGPT or Azure AI key to us, for us to use their own, or they want to plug in their own large language model and APIs instead of the ChatGPT one. But just baking it into either the browser real estate or our own standalone app and having the DLP controls, again, we go back to a much better end user experience, an enablement tool.
Yep. No, that's interesting. Dan, I seriously, we could sit and chat all day. I mean, I have so many questions about, how do you set the policies at scale and all, I mean, with all those different knobs and all that, but we'll have to leave that, for another day. But really interesting stuff. Again, I have some old friends that work at Island as well, so they've been keeping me in the loop a little bit about what you guys are up to. Very exciting because again, it's a real problem that we haven't been able to address with the current kind of set of security controls and tools that we've been using for a long time. So good times. Again, very interesting. Keep an eye on Island. If folks want to learn more about the company and specifically around the ChatGPT and AI capabilities you have, is there a specific area they can go to, or should they just go to your general website?
On island.io, we've got our masterclass where you can watch videos, see resources, and get in touch with us. And, I welcome all listeners or viewers to jump to island.io and contact us.
Island.io. Dan Amiga, thanks a million for your time and telling us a little bit about what you guys have up to. And we will see you next time on Techstrong TV. Now let's send it back to the studio for our next interview.
This is Techstrong TV.
With the great pleasure of being joined by Terry Ray, Terry SVP, Data Security GTM, Field CTO, and Imperva Fellow at Imperva. Welcome. Good to see you again, Terry.
Thanks. Good to see you again, Mitch.
Well, we're talking about data and then fill in the like data security, data privacy, data protection. There's a lot of terms that, of course, security, we like to say it's about protecting the data, right? That's a big part of it. But those terms kind of get thrown around interchangeably. And maybe they are to a degree, but they all have kind of very specific meanings. I'm wondering if you can parse out security, privacy, protection, and maybe any other term we might use in that lexicon, or what maybe the differences are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting. Yeah, I hear all the time. We at Imperva, we use the term data security, and that's what do you do? We do data security. Data privacy is one of these that's also interesting, and that's a little bit newer, but it's nuanced. And then data protection is one that the way I use it, the way I hear it's used, it's kind of the ultimate goal of what we're trying to achieve. It's not technologies and everything else, but we're trying to protect data. That's really what it comes down to. And you have to define what protecting data means to you. And what I mean by that is, when I hear these somewhat interchangeable terms, specifically data security and data protection, very interchangeable. Privacy is this other kind of a piece to that. When I hear, let's begin with data security and data protection. So the majority of organizations that come to Imperva and say, Imperva, I need you to, and this the other fill in the blank. We hear two different questions here, sometimes three. The two different questions are, I need you to help me secure my data. I need you to help me comply with a regulation. Those are the two primary reasons why organizations even start thinking about, I'm going to use the term data security here, start thinking about data security is because they came together and either determined due to some incident of a peer, due to some revelation that they need to actually, and I'm going to use the term protect, they need to actually protect their data using best practice and technology and processes. It's their choice. They need to go do it. Or more commonly, unfortunately, someone else has told them, you're not doing enough. You need to go do more when it comes to protecting your data. So you should go look for data security technologies that will help you protect your data. So when I put this in and then that third one out there is you need to meet privacy regulations. And that kind of falls hand in hand with the classification or the compliance piece. But it all boils up to, I need to protect data for some reason, usually falls into two buckets: compliance, regulation, whatever you want to call it, and security. And this is when we start to use these terms. They're very commonly used interchangeably. And I wouldn't say there's a right and wrong, but I just think that there's a little bit of a hierarchy, right? You've got protection. That's what we're trying to achieve: data protection. I'm trying to protect my data because I want to, or because somebody told me to. The way I do that is leveraging data security, whether that be data technologies or knowledge or expertise or whatever. And then even though privacy has this dotted line, a very thick dotted line, in fact, to data security. In fact, all privacy regulations say you need to secure your data, but also go do a data subject access request and some other processes and hire some people. It fits into that piece as kind of a sidecar to the security piece. But that overarching piece is about data protection.
I like that structure a lot, because if data protection is sort of the umbrella, security is the technology and methods, processes, et cetera, people, right, that we use to protect that. And then privacy, as you said, with that thick dotted line from compliance and regulatory, seems like it also nuances into how can you use my data when you're talking about, like personal identifiable information. And of course, that varies across region, geography, country, maybe universe, global planets. I'm not sure where it's going to go someday, but they all have kind of their own nuances. But that gets into other nuances of use and protecting people's information, as well as customers and partners and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's one of these interesting things where when you talk to so many customers over time, and the conversation immediately shifts in the discussion to, what are you trying to protect? Okay, you said I need data protection, therefore I'm talking to you about data security technologies. What can you do for me? And then there's a whole myriad list of technologies that fall into that. But what ultimately happens in these organizations is they say, I have 1,000 databases, and that's a pretty large organization. I have 1,000 databases. And then I ask, okay, so you need to protect. We're talking about protecting all 1,000. And they say, no, not really. What I want to do is I want to protect the databases or data stores, file servers, whatever, where I have blank. PII, personally identifiable, EPHI, healthcare information, PCI, name your flavor, whatever it is, that's what I want to protect. And that's the other hurdle I think ultimately organizations have to get over. Sure, they need, you don't have to use the right terminology as long as you get to the right place and talk to the right people. But I think as people start to understand what is the motivating factor for doing data security, and then once you've gotten that motivation, okay, somebody told me I need to go do this, or I'm told I have to do this because we just lost 1 million records and I'm told it better not happen again or else. So I've got to go get this done. So how do I solve for this? Unfortunately, in most organizations, that solve for speaks to the privacy angle that you talked to. For years and years, the solution to the breach or the solution to the compliance was go protect that data. It's not the data that's just important because we know it's important. It's the data that's important to that regulation. And every other bit of data, frankly, isn't in scope. I'm not going to spend money on it because I don't have a pain. There's no pain associated with me losing anything other than this data that's regulated. So why would I spend money on it? Now, I have 1,000 reasons why you would spend money on it, but organizations tend not to. And that's how we got to privacy regulations, is people protected what? Financial records for SOX, PCI records, HIPAA records, et cetera, but they lost names, addresses, phone numbers over and over and over and over and over again. So now we saw exactly this, right? Not only do you need to protect, as you said, not only do you need to protect data that frankly isn't really relevant to the organization, it's relevant to the users and the customers and the employees of that organization. You have to protect this because of your fines. But at the same time, you then have to go back and answer those questions around privacy. Should you have this data at all in the first place? Mm-hmm. What are you doing with this? Are you selling this data? That's a whole nother set of requirements. Are you capturing it for whatever the reason being? You have to have well-defined processes and answers around why you're collecting this traditionally unregulated data, now regulated because organizations, unfortunately, failed to prioritize the security of this data for couple of decades or so. And so now now laws are in place to say, well, it's going to put some pain in place if you're not doing it.
I'm curious, as customers approach you, are they, what are they getting caught up on? Like, I'm trying to put together my strategy for how we do data protection. My technology organization steers me one way, the regulatory group steers me another way. Do they need some help sorting this out, or they have a pretty good idea of, got this pain point today, next I need to solve that? Is there a set of problems they're looking for help with?
Yeah, so it's a challenge, right? So I spend a lot of my time talking to audit organizations, trying to educate auditors. I think if you talk to it, and in fact, I know some credit card companies. So I know if you go talk to some credit card companies themselves, they have pretty good idea of exactly what they mean by the letter of payment card industry, PCI, what have you. If you go talk to the OCI in the U.S. government about HIPAA and what they mean by it, they're pretty clear. From there, it trickles down. It's kind of like one of those programs where you line up a bunch of people and they pass a secret down the line and you see if you got the same answer at the other end. Mm-hmm. The same thing. So we see the exact same thing in this. When driven by compliance, organizations have a lot of flexibility and interpretation that they can take in it. It doesn't say go buy a WAF. Right. It doesn't say go deploy a database security solution. It doesn't say go do explicit things most of the time. There's some very explicit things it does say. Every regulation out there will tell you need to go encrypt data. Go encrypt your data. Now we know HTTPS exists just about everywhere. If you don't have it, then you're definitely falling through the cracks. But you have to go do certain things that are out there. And I think that's the challenge that organization leaders have is, what do I do when they have to use their own auditors, their own internal people to try and interpret what does it mean when it says go do best practice and secure your data? This takes us to data security. In data security, if you go to RSA, I know you've been to RSA. So if you go to RSA, there are hundreds to thousands of vendors that will claim data security, and they might not be wrong. So where do I begin in this journey? And this is one of the things that I've recognized over the years, and Perv is doing a lot of work toward this, to be able to start to put kind of risk measures in place, to be able to tell an organization, look, you've told me that you want to protect your data, and you want to do it using data security technologies, maybe not just Imperva, but a bunch. So Imperva has a platform, right? We brought this platform to play to be able to say, this is a data security platform. And there are others. You can talk to Gartner, Coopinger, Cole, whomever, right? But there are others. But when you look at this platform, it starts to answer questions like, do you have encryption? Is your data encrypted? Do you know where all of your private data is? I want to be able to catalog and have a map of all of my private data. Do I know where all of my servers are? I thought I only had 5, but lo and behold, I have 10 or 1,000 or 10,000, whatever it is. So do I know where my servers are? Do I know where my private data is? Have I encrypted that private data? Am I monitoring it? Am I taking that data and applying controls to it? All of these things fall into data security. Arguably, identity access. Is it Terry? Is it supposed to be Terry? There's all these pieces. And so one of the things, and what we've been working on here recently, is the ability to give you a score to say, what's your risk? What's your percentage chance of a breach? And what's your percentage chance of non-compliance? Those are two different things. Mm-hmm. I might be fully compliant, yet still be very vulnerable to a breach because I'm really just protecting PCI cards, and the other 90 of my 100 servers aren't under regulation. So I'm doing a great job on one and not on the other. But following right along that is to say, why do you have the score that you have? Well, you have the score that you have because you've told me you have credit cards, but you're not encrypting it. And that's a requirement of PCI. So your score is a little bit higher of a non-compliance because you haven't done these things. So the goal here is to be able to identify from a data protection perspective, kind of their posture. Where are you? What's your status? And what do you need to do next? When you come in on Monday, you have a list of these are the things you can do to make this score better, to better this rating, if you will. And that's something that I think the organizations have missed for a long time, is being provided some level of instruction to be able to say, you can interpret it the way you want, for sure, but we have a lot of expertise and we can do it as well.
It seems to me, to run this idea by you, it seems to me that also those are many, many benefits by having that scorecard, having that process of developing that risk profile and where you are and what you need to do to improve. Also, we're working in a fluid environment, right? Yes, regulatory things are changing, then not as fast as business is changing, right? What the company wants to do with that data. We now have 1,000 more databases this week than we had last week. Who did that? How did that happen? How does it fall onto this? So now you've got a framework to work from to say, well, here's what we do. Here's how we do it. Do those same processes, technologies, people, et cetera, apply to those things, or do we need to adapt? Right? What we're doing with that data is slightly different. Okay, maybe there's a compliance or privacy thing that we need to do and validate. Versus without that, you're just kind of everything is dealt as a one-off, and now you really don't have a good sense of, have we done enough? Are we doing enough of the right things to both be compliant, be protected, as well as serve our customers without losing their PII?
Yeah, you're right, and I'll keep this one short. I mean, the reality is as you recognize in an organization that there aren't a lot of data security, data protection, data privacy from a technology and security perspective experts that are out there, and so trying to rely on your own expertise is fine. I can name on maybe one hand the number of companies I talk to that have truly a data security expert that I would say that guy knows what he's doing. The rest have to rely on automation. They have to rely on the technology of the vendors that they've brought about. Sometimes there's services organizations, et cetera, that they have, but it provides them, particularly the automation, provides them that capability to not have that inkling in the back of their head that's always back there saying, am I missing something? What am I not doing? What gap do I have? Having that automation in place as part of a platform to be able to say, yeah, you just spun up. We've just recognized, because we scan every day or week or month, whatever it is. I've just recognized 5 new data stores. I automatically classified those data stores, and when I did, I found some PCI data inside those data stores. These are not listed as PCI data stores yet. There's credit cards over here. I can automatically apply controls. I can already bubble this to the top, and I can already give it a score and say, highly risky, not risky, whatever. And that becomes an important piece that says, I don't have to remember every single thing. I can have a process, but I can recognize that the technology is going to keep me current and make certain that like Waze or anything else taking me somewhere, if the status of the freeway changes, it's going to automatically say, here's a better route. And we want to be able to do the same thing when it comes to data security, to be able to say, your environment has changed. There's a different route you need to take. There's some things that you need to do. We've already done a lot of them for you. Just follow this path.
Last question is, how do people engage with you? Because we've talked about it's a pretty wide swath of all the different target areas, lexicon of terms, things to deal with when people approach Imperva. What's the best way, if I'm saying I'm wrestling with some questions or I need a better strategy in place, a better risk profile? How do they do that? They call up their local 1-800 Imperva. No, I'm being facetious. How do we engage with Imperva to get the best experience and value from that engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like any organization, we have a sales arm and all of this, right? And you can certainly always reach out to that. But I find most commonly, the organizations that we work with have trusted partners that are already out in the ecosystem, right? So, in America, there's lots of partners. In Europe, around the world, there are value-added resellers, distributors, system integrators, whoever it is you normally work with from a data protection, data security, and I'll argue data privacy perspective. Ask them about Imperva, and they'll be able to get in touch with you. If they don't know anything about Imperva, absolutely reach out to us, and we can not only educate you, but certainly your partner as well, and make sure they're aware of it also.
Yeah, I know you. I'm aware you have a very large partner network, and between that and your customer base, there's someone who's going to know about Imperva.
Yeah, for sure.
Most definitely. Great. Well, folks can always, of course, go to the Imperva site, imperva.com, and find out more. Terry, it's fantastic talking with you again. I look forward to our next conversation. Until then, be safe protecting that data and helping customers do that.
Appreciate it.
All righty. We'll talk to you again soon.
Hello, I'm Amanda Rosani. I'm here with Digital CXO, and I'm excited to be here today with Jerry Foster. He is the CTO of Plex. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Amanda. How are you?
Good. Can you talk a little bit about yourself and your history and a little bit about the company, what Plex does?
Right. So again, my name is Jerry Foster, CTO of Plex, one of the co-founders at Plex. Plex makes manufacturing software, software that helps run a manufacturing facility, anything from MES and ERP down to quality and production scheduling and control and supply chain planning software, anything that a manufacturer would need to run their facility. I've been with the company, one of the founders, for 25 years, actually going on 28 years, actually, now that I look at the date. We actually got our start before we actually officially started Plex inside of a forging company. So the five of us that started Plex actually cut our teeth inside of a manufacturing facility. We were in a forging facility, one of those old, heavy and hot and dirty manufacturing facilities. And we worked as the computer department in that forging company. And we built a computer system that basically computerized or digitalized every aspect of that manufacturing company. And that was very successful, helping that forging company become a top player in the forging space as a supplier to Ford and General Motors. And after we did that, we decided, hey, this was pretty successful. Maybe other companies would be interested in purchasing what we had built for this forging company. So we started our own company on April Fool's Day, 1995. And have been going ever since. So it's been quite a journey.
Well, awesome. And congratulations for, you said 28 years, going on 28 years. That's
Yes.
Wonderful. So you know a lot about supply chain.
Yeah.
And you recently did a State of Smart Manufacturing survey. Can you tell us and our audience a little bit about what that entailed? Who were you surveying? What kind of questions were you asking?
Sure. So one of the things we started several years ago is we wanted to just get a really good take on what was happening in the digital transformation space of our customers, what they were dealing with, what their thoughts were, where they were headed. And so we started this survey many years ago, asking manufacturers about their processes, about their operations, and specifically around technology and what they were doing to digitize their operations. So we asked this last year, about 1,300 manufacturers responded to the survey. And the questions cover all sorts of questions about technology and what they're doing. What are your plans for implementing technology? What have you done so far? What are your struggles with implementing technology? Where are the pain points? Where do you see yourself in a couple of years? Anything that has to do with how they are applying Industry 4.0 solutions and technology to their operations. So basically, we're covering all manufacturers. Anybody who makes something is covered in the report. And like I said, we had about 1,300 respondents, I believe, which is a great cross-section of manufacturing across all of the various industries.
So I bet you have some interesting insights to share with us today. And I know one statistic that you shared earlier was that 80% of manufacturers did not have end-to-end supply chain planning in place. Why is this, and what can they do about it?
Yeah, so the reason they don't have end-to-end is I think they're not quite sure what's out there, and they're not quite sure how to take a holistic view of their process, of their operations, and put something in place that they are confident will cover that whole end-to-end process, that whole end-to-end work in their facility. So they look at what's available to them, and they're like, I'm not sure if that's going to work or if this is going to work. And manufacturers often go with if it's not broke, don't fix it kind of mentality. And so sometimes they need a little nudging, a little pushing, a little showing what the ROI is in order to really start to make an effort. So one of the things that we tell our customers is, there is a whole lot of additional ROI. There's a whole lot of untapped potential that is just sitting there in your facility that you are not taking advantage of. Coming out of a forging facility and cutting my teeth in manufacturing, one of the things that we are always trying to do is increase efficiencies and have better quality and measure everything that was happening from one end of the facility to the other, including the customers and suppliers on each side. And so that's something that manufacturers have been struggling with for as long as I've been in the industry, being able to measure and capture everything that happens. And so when we sit down with a customer and say, look, there is technology out there now that will allow you to have that view, and here's what the ROI is, and here is how it can improve your operations, it can improve your OEE, it can improve your shipping, it can improve your quality, then they start to sit up and take notice. So I think it's all about giving the manufacturers confidence that there is something out there that they can really sink their teeth into that's going to make a difference for them.
And I think it's very important that they do have a plan moving forward, because this affects overall the customer experience as well as the product quality. So what are some technologies out there that are up and coming that would be useful, and how would they implement these technologies in a digital transformation initiative?
Oh, so you're talking with Chief Technology Officer, so I can just talk about technology for the next hour, and like I said, I love geeking out on some of this stuff. But if you were to ask me to, what are of all the technologies that are available to our customers, what are a couple of them that I think really have the potential to make a major impact? Two come to mind. One is artificial intelligence. Smart manufacturing and digital transformation is all about connecting people, machines, and software, and then collecting data from all of those connected processes and using that data to your advantage. And one of the things that people come to me often at conferences and panels where I speak at, they're like, I have so much data, I don't even know what to do with it. I don't even know where to start. And so we can give you some hints and some places to start, but at the end of the day, there is a kind of a crisis with so much data. And that's one of the places that artificial intelligence comes in, because when it's built to crunch massive amounts of data and uncover dependencies and insight that you could have never seen on your own just by looking at it or looking at reports. So artificial intelligence really has the capability to kind of crack that nut of what do I do with all of this data. I think the other technology that really is making a huge difference is 3D printing. It's one of my favorite technologies. And the cool thing about 3D printing is when you look at it this way, almost every manufacturing process that we know of or that we use right now, whether you're forging or extruding or stamping, all those processes take a block of material and they remove material until you get to the part that you want. And all the material you remove is scrap. The 3D printing starts with nothing and it only prints what you need till you got it. There's really no scrap. So the amount of materials, the type of materials, the kind of processes that you can do with 3D printing now is just amazing. And so I think that really has the potential to increase quality, to reduce scrap, to really shorten lead times on pre-production type design work. And then now we're seeing the technology is so strong, we're actually seeing customers actually use 3D printed parts in the final application, in production, which is fascinating. So it's got huge potential in my opinion.
And both of these technologies will definitely improve efficiency and quality. So the technology is there, but now how do they go about implementing this? Who are the key players to make this happen and make sure it happens in the right way so that it's a positive outcome?
So there's a couple things that we have seen that are crucial to having a successful implementation of anything. And this is, in my opinion, this is across any technology. These sorts of things are really not technology specific for the most part. And there are a couple things. One is really making sure you have a consult. I don't know if I want to use the word consultant, but get some help a partner, someone who's been there and done that, who can kind of hold your hand through this process, especially if you're just getting started in your technology transformation journey and you're kind of uncertain on how to approach things. Finding someone that's been through that can save you heartache and give you confidence and taking that first step. I think that's really important. The other thing is having a mindset inside of your company that this is something that that we need to get everyone on board with. So often I have seen companies that say, you got IT or a few people that are like, or the CEO or someone's like, this is really cool. And they study about it and they read about it and they say, okay, we're going to do this. And they just shove it into the plant. And then they're like, why isn't this taking root? Why is everyone pushing back? It's so obvious why this is a good technology. Well, it's obvious to you because you spent the last 2 months reading about it. You've got to give your employees the same benefit of the doubt. You have to walk them through it. You have to do proof of concepts with them. You have to answer their questions. You have to let them try it out, and actually give them the same, the same space that you gave yourself to become comfortable with that technology. Basically, it comes down to change management, right? Really good change management, making sure everyone is on board, giving them the tools to do that. We had one customer, just real brief, that was putting in some new lean manufacturing processes in their systems, and their employees were like, "This is kind of scary. How many more people are we going to need to actually implement this?" And the management said, "We're not going to have any extra people. You're going to do more with what the people you have now." And they were like, "No way!" And so management actually built a pretend part out of Legos, like blocks, with a bill of material. And they went into a training room and they had brought all their employees in and they built this part, both the old way and the new way. And they came out and they go, "Oh my gosh, this really works. We can do this much more efficiently than we were doing it before." And the employees came out of there going, "Woohoo, let's go change," which was amazing. So it's all about leadership that says, how can I partner with the employees to bring them along on the ride?
That's incredible. So I know one topic of discussion around the use of AI and automation is, and 3D printing, in fact, is the concern that jobs will be going away. What do you feel about this? Are jobs going away, or is it just introducing new jobs?
So, if you asked me this 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, I would have said, well, that's a real danger. In fact, I've got articles saved about, the sky is falling, kind of a fear of automation and AI is going to take all of our jobs, and memes and pictures of robots taking over, and it just hasn't happened. And I think the reason is because we are struggling to fill jobs, especially manufacturing. We currently have 800,000 open jobs in manufacturing in this country, and it's supposed to be 2.1 million by 2030 open jobs. And so what automation and AI is doing right now is just filling the spaces that we need. So I'm not seeing a whole lot of jobs being displaced yet by automation. I don't see it in the near future. There's probably some, but for the most part, the jobs that people no longer want to do, those monotonous, tedious, repetitive jobs, those are the jobs that are perfect for automation. And if we hadn't invested in automation, we'd be in even more of a world of hurt than we are now. So it was kind of fortunate that those technologies kept moving forward to kind of help fill the gap that we're in right now. But it does mean, I think, down the road, and we're already seeing this, we're really going to have to start looking at how do we upskill and train and help our employees become more comfortable with the technology that they're going to have to be working with day to day. That's something that the report brought out as well, is our customers are struggling with training and upskilling their current workforce to be comfortable with all of this new technology.
That was going to be my next question. You mentioned the big there's all these jobs out there and they're not being filled. So there's a big gap. And so is it a skills gap? Why is it that these jobs aren't being filled? Thank goodness we do have technology to cover a lot of them. But what do companies need to do to fill these jobs?
So I think, well, first of all, they need to continue to invest in automation. And that's not only things like robotics, but there's things like MES software, which can automate processes. It's any sort of automation that can assist your facility. So they need to continue to invest in that. And then I think we need to be creative. I think one of the reasons that we're really struggling is that there's a perception problem on manufacturing. You know, I told you about when I first started off 30 years ago in a forging facility, how dirty it was. I would come home with my nice clothes and full of grease on my hair, which I had at the time, and oil on my shoes. And my wife was like, I thought you were a programmer, because it was so dirty in the facility. And it's just not that way anymore. It's not your grandfather's manufacturing. It's full of technology. It's clean. It's there's so much fascinating stuff going on, and you can make a good living in manufacturing. And so we have a responsibility to tell this upcoming generation and the current younger workforce, this is a great place to apply your technology and walk out on the floor and see what you're doing and see the parts that are being made right there in front of you and see the real application of what you're doing. It's pretty amazing. So I think our customers in manufacturing need to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? They need to be a little more original on how they're approaching